I'm Dr. Kyra Bobinet, and my purpose on this planet is to reduce suffering. And I've been at the problem of long-term lasting behavior change for 3 decades.
Wait, so I know, I've read one of your books is on my shelf, and we're going to talk about your app today. But I'm curious because you had I have a mission, I have a personal mission statement. Boom. Have you always had that personal mission statement? Is there some point, like a few years ago, where you sat down and went through an exercise? I want to figure out what my purpose is, and this is how I want to say it.
No, I would say that when I was, in my late 20s, I, was very, I was searching for what is the nugget of what drives me. And I would say that the sort of ideas of compassion, pursuit of wisdom, service, those kinds of things were always a constant from the time I was born. Caring about nature, caring about people, caring about science, and using science and medicine to improve lives. And then there was a departure between myself and the Western healthcare system, where I had this patient and I had 10 minutes with him, and he was, came in because he had a gouty toe, which is a very standard thing, very, very easy to cure. And I just 10 minutes with each patient, really quick kind of clinic work. And I was like, so I'm writing the prescription. I'm like, so how'd this happen? And he's like, well, 3 days ago, doc, I did meth. And then that means he got dehydrated because he hasn't been asleep in 3 days. And then his toe has gout. And here I am, this script monkey, just writing a prescription for this. And I got intrigued by that. And it didn't wake me up and say, oh, I got to be an addiction medicine person or anything. But it was I don't want to be a prescriber. I want to be somebody who is on the other end of the animal. I'm literally on the wrong end of the animal. I'm down at the toe and I want to be in the brain, And I didn't know it at the time, but just, how life unfolds. It's just layers after layers after layers of everybody, right? Clarity and clarity. And I would say that, what felt really authentic back then was I am here to reduce suffering. And it just hasn't deviated from that. It's just more filled out as to how and what I use to do that.
Well, and we don't, I'm pointing to one, I have Well-Designed Life on my shelf.
Oh,
and
okay.
then my boss read the more recent book.
Well, I'll send you the new one.
Ooh, awesome. Okay. I'll look at that too.
Just send me your address. Yeah.
So thinking about the mission to reduce suffering and, again, thinking about Western medicine, treating symptoms at the end of the problem, you're having a problem. What is the problem you're experiencing? Let's just get rid of that problem, as opposed to where did this problem come from? How is it tied into your habits, your day-to-day life? How is it tied into your neurology and your personality? So tell me how this app, the Fresh Try app, which is maybe your latest, feels like might be the latest endeavor because it's brand new. How does that sit in there? Where was it birthed? Did it come out of a book? Did it come out of conversations with people?
Yeah. So we're going to get into things I've never said publicly. So
okay.
After medical school, I started a nonprofit for at-risk youth. That taught me behavior change and how recalcitrant, meaning it bounces back, relapses. I saw that in my patients, but I really got to see up close the longitudinal, somebody trying to change their life and just life and habits kind of reverting back and then them feeling defeated. And there was one guy who, kind of got in front of some video games because he just gave up, trying to get a job or trying to, go to school. And one of our other youth mentors went to his house and he's like, so man, you're just going to give up? Is this you giving up? And a lot of that, taught me how difficult it was. Then I went to public health school thinking, okay, I can do something for populations of people and I can be an intervention designer, right? And then that drew me to, because I did my thesis on that in grad school, then that I got recruited to a very large payer, but in the sort of good area of trying to make people healthier, health intervention kind of world. And it was health and wellness innovation. And by trying everything, by partnering with, large hospital systems like Duke University, doing, mindfulness-based stuff, doing cutting-edge work to see if we could, really take a different tact on this, because everything else kind of, temporary results, long-term, relapse. And so I was looking for like the unlock there. And, I went then to Stanford, worked with in BJ Fogg's behavior design lab, because he was the closest thing to what I really thought would work. His lab birthed Instagram, for crying out loud. And
Okay.
unfortunately, a lot of the stuff of those days became the addictive social media technologies, because they kind of co-opted behavioral science for that purpose, for evil, if you will, to make kids sick and people divided and things like that. But I really wanted to stay on the side of like, how could these powerful ways in which our brain and our behavior kind of connect up, help people. And I did a keynote for Well-Designed Life, the first book, in front of a very large organization called the National Business Group on Health, currently called Business Group on Health for those who are in the know. And the wellness person from Walmart, in charge of a million plus people, employees and their families, comes up to me and he says, let's have lunch. So we go to San Francisco when he's in town, we have lunch, and we had known each other from when I was at the Payer. And he said, if you could build anything, what would you build? And I didn't even miss a beat, and I didn't even know I felt this way. You kind of say things out loud. I didn't know I had that opinion. I just said habit engine. And so that's what Fresh Try is. We did the research on it, and then he gave me an opportunity to build the software. And then 8 years later, he now joined the company last year, and we're working together as kind of like the co-dreamers of this. And so that is the origin story. And the origin story really comes from and by the people, because when I did the field research on Walmart Associates, these are people who are hourly employees and have really, really stressful, really, challenging lives. But despite all of that, I found these like individuals scattered around the nation who had lost weight, kept it off, were able to like maintain, and that drew my interest. And so I discovered iterative mindset, which is kind of like the only shared quality they had was this one specific and special mindset. And that sits at the heart of Fresh Try. I'm not interested in building another tracking app or another, goal setting app or, wearables app or any of that kind of stuff. Like I tried all of that, guilty as charged. I tried all of that and it all failed.
Okay, so I want to ask about that because there are two big apps that stand out for me. So one is Noom,
right,
and is exactly what you said. Noom is tracking, and tracking has centuries of. I remember Benjamin Franklin with his virtues list. Yeah. Tracking your virtues, tracking your habits has been around forever. And some of these great people say it totally works, and it clearly does work for some people. So that's Noom. Then there's Fabulous, which came out of psychologists' work at a particular university and grew out of that. So tell me why Fresh Try, and not the way Noom does it, and not the way, say, Fabulous does it, with focusing on more cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology concepts, things like that.
So in behavioral science circles that I have run in, and now I'm kind of out on my own, there are different camps of people who I would say have different attitudes. So there's one camp that's like, let's use behavioral psychology to manipulate people.
Okay.
And then there's other people who are like, let's sound like we're using behavioral science, but we're really just using goals and tracking, and that kind of
Right.
So a lot of these companies, and also some of the leadership, from some of these companies who trained with people who later were, there was a scandal because they fabricated their data, even though they might have been academics. And I'm not going to name names, but there's just a lot of corruption, I would say, in these worlds and scientists. And it's sad because science itself, when done well, should be listened to, should be, giving all of us kind of a North Star. And the fact that there's people, and this all goes down to why iterative mindset, because performance mindset, which is the basis of all of the competition, they're all doing performance mindset. In the literature, performance mindsets, aka performance-based goal orientation, mouthful, are associated with cheating, lying, loss of effort. Because you think about it, like if you're under pressure, Did you ever cheat on a test growing up as a little kid?
Well, I didn't, but I'm a weirdo. So I didn't, but I'm a weirdo. So
Okay, well, you must be really high on the conscientiousness part of Big Five
yeah, I
personality.
am. When I do those big
Yeah,
five tests, like
yeah,
conscientious is way up there. So
yeah.
I get that dopamine hit when I'm like, I could do something wrong, but I didn't, and now I feel good.
Well, I'm glad you exist. Please have children and raise them the same way. Like you're
But I know most people, just like again, those well-meaning psychologists you mentioned, eventually you fabricate data or you want to sort of overhype it because there are huge incentives in your life for your reputation, for your own self-psychology,
yeah.
huge incentives to do it.
Yeah, and one of my sort of like flaws as a entrepreneur and as a thought leader and as an innovator is that I have integrity. In that world, that does not
Terrible.
act as an automatic differentiator in a good way. Like it's like despite my integrity, I have to get the word out around things, and so I would say that Noom has enviable messaging, enviable marketing. They put
Yes.
so much money into marketing, and their marketing is like, we're all psychology, but then if you peel the
Correct.
layer back, as you pointed out already, it's tracking, you know, and fabulous tracking. And so anytime you have something that's mostly tracking as the method for which they're trying to change behavior, what happens inevitably to the human animal is that we start either cheating, lying, or failing. Because if I'm tracking against something that it's not going the way I want, then this area of the brain that we're going to talk about, the habenula,
Yeah.
gets activated, and then that is the whole game. That's the whole game. And it does work. Tracking does work for 5% of the people, but we don't understand that as a population. And so we keep leaning on tracking, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping that it will get better, hoping
And
that
everybody,
different.
so it's one thing, what calorie counting, if your performance literally performing like I'm seeing if I can become a better runner, trying to get faster and faster. So there's some percentage of people that's working for, but this is baked into everything. And it's even, I saw in the app, there's a mention like SMART goals don't work. And I'm like, SMART goals never worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think goal setting works for people. Setting a goal seems to work, but then they tell you it has to be this and this and this and this, and you got to it's got to be tracked. You got to track it. Tracking has never worked for me. So I want you now to crap on tracking and how this doesn't work with this part of our brain because it doesn't work for me. So I feel validated.
Yeah, like this is a sacred cow in the literature. Mark Cole,
Yeah.
that there's a couple scientists willing to do some really controversial work. There was one on New Year's resolutions that showed that there's 3 treatment arms, two controls and one with SMART goals. So the other 2 controls are do nothing to people. The second one is, do some health education. And then third one is health education plus SMART goals. And guess what came in last? The SMART goals in terms of people retaining and keeping going a year later. Even the controls where you did nothing to people did better. And so that's the kind of data for somebody like myself who's had the career I've had, that I've seen these data up front, up close and personal. Like, why is everybody quitting? Why is everybody relapsing? Why, if you pay a human coach to go after somebody, why do they avoid you and never want to come back? And it's all this habenula. So once I learned about the brain science of it, the whole world made sense. I was like, oh, I can see the matrix code now. I understand what's going on. And so tracking, I would say tracking does have a use case. Again, 5% of people can use it long term and not be worried about it. And also they have to use it in an area of their life where they have a lot of confidence. So you can use it in areas where you're very confident, where it's not like shaky knees. You can really, really lean into tracking and optimizing with that. Professional athletes use it all the time, things like that, but they only use it in their areas of strength. They're not using it in their areas of relationships, money management, areas where they might be weaker, So that is tracking. On the other hand, the other use case for tracking is short-term ahas, like I did a CGM and a continuous glucose monitor because
Okay.
I am from both sides of my family has diabetes. I have struggles with A1C. I have struggles with sugar cravings. Like part of why I'm doing this work is because it's like I need it, you know? I needed to get off fast food as a young person. I needed to learn how to get my food habits under control and not just work out until, I could balance it out. I needed to learn how to get over my sugar addiction and my dessert addiction and my all these addictions. And so I've been, as an addict to sugar, I have to constantly work with my brain on how do I practice something that's going to grab me, that's going to make me move forward. So CGM, I wore it for 4 weeks. It was depressing. The reason why it's depressing is I realized like I eat just like a little bit of rice and my blood sugar spikes up over 200. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so depressing and I can't control it. So then I started walking after a meal and I could lower about 40 points. I could get to like 180 or 170, but still really dangerous and really terrible. Just for reference, for those of you who don't know, 150 with food should be all you spike. For if you're normal, if you don't have a bad pancreas, which I might have. And so after 4 weeks, I send my data to my provider, who's a naturopath. And she says to me, well, it looks like you're spiking a lot, especially in the afternoon. Try to, eat less carbs and, eat more veggies or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, no, like I know what to do. I love her every other way. But that was just like the biggest fail in my mind because I was having a whole psychological thing about it. I had revealed that to her. I already told her that I was having these issues and that I felt out of control with my spikiness and that I eat only whole foods. I don't eat refined sugar, but this is what was happening. And I felt really, really sad that my body wasn't able to respond at that level and that I'm going to have to become more pristine about my diet because I don't feel ready to make those changes. So
there was a cognitive and an emotional element that even the naturopath was not sensitive to. She just kind of went to her thing and said, these are the two things we can do to bring the blood sugar down. You should do that.
It's like one size fits all spiel. That's why I created Fresh Try. Because the only thing that I have found that works for people is to be able to gravitate towards something they think they might be able to get themselves to do, figure out if that is true or not, and then iterate and find something else if they need to, or use that one first thing and iterate on that in small ways. So that's the only thing that is natural, that works for our brain, and that people will do long term, honestly.
Okay, I want to ask about that because I want you to explain more the iterative mindset and how it ties into this part of the brain, kind of in capsule form. But I think what you're talking about, the iterative mindset, I think my experience out in the world, being someone who, it sounds like we were both curious about our purpose in life. So you're going and seeking lots of what do people say the purpose of life is? And so I think what people do, the iterative mindset is I'm going to go to one app and it's going to tell me this is the one solution. And when this one solution doesn't work, I'm going to go to another app or coach, and that coach is going to tell me this is the one solution. And then when that doesn't work, I'm going to go. So I think people are encouraged to iterate by the world out there, with a lot of people saying, I've got the one true idea. What you're talking about is probably a more personal experience of the mindset and doing that kind of work yourself, not looking around for a guru to tell you the one true way, but maybe.
Or what I would say is a meta statement.
Okay.
A guru is an iteration for most people.
Yeah.
And an iteration has an unknown expiration date. So you might find your guru and die with the same guru because it works for you.
Okay.
But what you're talking about in terms of like health apps is each one of those is an iteration. The key though is that in our performative world, we have this all or nothing, good or bad, dichotomous way of thinking about these things. And so I go to app 1. It doesn't work for me after a certain while. That's predictive, by the way. It's not going to work for everybody, and it's not going to work for you eventually, right?
Right.
And so, the guru kind of falls out of favor. You get disillusioned with it. You quit. Some failure happens in your mind, and your habenula is like, all right, we're going to stop doing that, because the habenula is the brakes. And so anytime you have brakes on your behavior, that's the habenula. I go to app 2. I feel bad because I failed in my mind with app 1. And I didn't notice how toxic failure is. So I take that failure experience. It's a habenula hit in my world. I take that habenula hit and I go over to app 2. Then I'm like, this will work. No, this one right here. It's the cat's meow. It's everything. And then that also fails me at some point, or I get tired of it, or I get bored of it, or I don't feel good and I'm not sure why, but I stop doing it because my habenula has turned on. It has killed my motivation to keep trying that thing. And then I've got to find a third app. Then I go to the third app. I've got 2 habenula hits on board. The chances of this third app finding unscorched earth in me, in my habenula at that point, is very, very narrow. Very narrow, right? And so this is what we do. We burn ourselves out. And so what I find is that the biggest segment of people who come to Fresh Try, who use Fresh Try, are people who have relapsed on other things, not realized that they didn't fail. We're trying to talk them out of that being a failure. Like, it's great what you've learned because it's gotten you here, and stay here as long as you want. What I care about is that I switch your mindset from performance mindset, which is constantly leaving people in a world of toxic blame, shame, failure that makes them feel less and less able to live their lives and get what they want. And I want to reverse that with an iterative mindset. You can also have an experimental version of this mindset, right? Like, some people are more scientifically minded, and so they'll be more experimental. But iteration is the heart of everything. And I once saw this book review of my recent book, Unstoppable Brain, which was meant to be a criticism. And it was this user, this reader who said, I don't know what, like, the author thinks that iteration is the answer to everything, like, it's ridiculous. Okay. And I was like, yes, I do. Thank you for, revealing. Yes, I feel so seen right now. Like, it was not an insult for me because I was like, well, at least you got what I was trying to say. I have never in my whole life found something as powerful as iterative mindset. When we tested it in like legitimate, studies that we've done with a full professor at a major university, and we are publishing on those. We just published our first paper in a peer-reviewed article. We are now going to publish the other data. But we want to get that data out because, like, the second most powerful, way to keep going and to get lasting change is optimism. Speaking of the big 5 personality traits, that one, and then it's like, maybe learning-based goals. But performance-based goals is at the bottom. But that's the one that everybody uses often and for everything, and it's ridiculous.
Then, from your perspective, as the person who has something that sort of stands out, what is the common sense answer for how to handle these things, which is not working? You talk about in the app and in other places the no-do gap. You know something is true, or you've been told it and you believe it, but you cannot do it. So, iterative mindset, you're only asking people, I want you to stop focusing on failure, and I want you just to consider that all these solutions have windows of time they're going to work, and then you're going to have to iterate. You're going to have to come up with something new. You're going to have to change it somehow. You're going to have to look for something new. But people don't do that. So what's the no-do gap for the iterative mindset? What's the problem with taking on the iterative mindset?
Yeah, so the no-do gap is like a symptom that I think everybody can relate to, which is, I know what to do, I just don't do it. And that should be your first clue that your habenula is on in your brain. And everybody, my mission is twofold. Everybody needs to know they have a habenula and what it does. It activates if you think you failed at something. That's why failure is so important. And then it kills your motivation to keep trying if it turns on. So the game of life is keeping your habenula managed. That's it. And it's going to transform mental health. It's going to transform behavioral science. It's going to transform everything. I talked to a habenula researcher recently, and she said, in our circles, they're all nerds, and I love nerds. She said, in our circles, we say, the whole brain is there just to protect the habenula. That's their joke, because they realize how powerful and how central and how master control switch this thing is. And so, A, people have to know they have a habenula, and B, they have to know how to manage it, which is iterative mindset all day. And iterative mindset, basically, I found it in the field. It exists in nature, exists in people who get long-term change at anything. And we've tested it in health habits, work habits, and also weight loss as well as general. So we know that A, it's distinct from growth mindset or any of the other mindsets. And B, we know that it is most correlated, the highest correlations with long-term change of any psychological trait, whether it is grit, resilience, self-efficacy, learning-based goals, performance-based goals, you name it. Like I threw everything at this. And this is the thing that rose to the top. Like, A, it's natural. It's how we're naturally supposed to change without all this programming and marketing and, subscription models and all these things that are thrown at us that are really just about somebody else making money. The diet industry is like an abusive spouse, that people don't leave, that tells you that you're inadequate, that tells you that you're a failure so that you keep staying with them, and I'm trying to liberate people from that way of that capture, that they're inadequate, that somehow they're failing. You cannot fail at living your life. You cannot fail at being you. You're just a learning being, and that's enough. And it's good to learn how to iterate so that you are in your full power as a person.
Okay, I want to be sensitive. We've already gone over. So how much time do you have? I want to be sure to race a couple questions at the end or ask you more about the habenula.
You can ask me more about the habenula.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so here's my question. You say you got together with these nerds, and they're all saying the whole brain seems to have developed to defend this habenula in here, and then you're like, habenula causes you all kind of problems. What's the problem with scooping this thing? Wouldn't it be great to just do away with this thing? I want you to, evolutionary biology, defend this thing that causes us problems.
Yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged sword kind of area of the brain, right? Because on one hand, a functionally well-functioned, healthy habenula is needed so you don't, think that you can fly and jump off a cliff,
Okay.
Like, it's the thing that's like, no. Think about it, don't self-destruct. And even so much as what they find is that people who have depression, who have addictions, who die from their addiction, unfortunately, have shrunken habenula, which means that you don't have brakes in your car and you're driving your car, and you're driving down the road and there's no brakes, right? You're out of control. So that out of control state is when the habenula is not working, right?
Okay.
But also on the flip side of that, if it's too loud, if it's too, it's the source of our negative self-talk, right? And so if our negative self-talk is too loud and too frequent, you could imagine that you can't live your life. You can't follow your dreams. You can't even parent your child or take care of yourself because your brain is telling you that you can't, you're a failure, right? So it has this kind of double-edged quality. When you want to do something good for yourself, it's your biggest foe. When you want to do something harmful to yourself, it's your best friend.
Now you're talking again. It sounds like the habenula is just you shouldn't, or you can't, or you didn't, and you should remember that you couldn't when you tried last time, and that could be useful if you tried something bad, dangerous in your environment, in your history. But also, it really does keep you from trying. This is a habit that doesn't work anymore, doesn't make me feel good, causes damage to me or other people, but I'm used to it. I mean, so the power of I'm used to it is so powerful. I think that's what all these habit tracking and that's what this iterative mindset is trying to work with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we've been programmed to think that those things will work.
How do you hope people use the app as it's currently constituted? So it's got some intro videos that explain about the habenula, about the no-do gap, about the iterative mindset. It's got a test that kind of tells you, here's where you fall in these categories, and you paint it positively. The ones that have the most trouble right now with their habenula, you're the seeker. I wound up with the seeker. Like, you have the most opportunity for change, the easiest, because you get all the easy wins at the beginning. They're all right there for you waiting.
Yep.
So how do you hope people come to the app and use it? They download it on their phone. What do you want them to do?
Yeah, I think that, again, my mission is to help people restore to their natural devices, in the same way that we went from whole foods, farm living back in the, early 19th century, 20th century, then went to like Jello and Velveeta and McDonald's and like
Right.
really, really hyper processed food. And now you see a real, kind of going back to the farm kind of way of thinking, or at least everybody's aware that the processed foods are, in the highly processed foods especially, are not a way of life,
Yeah.
like we need to have real food and whole food. I think the same way, we started out being iterative, being ingenious, having our own homes and things like that, and then factories and performative companies and multinational companies came in, and we kind of gave over our souls to that, and golden handcuffs and stock options and security, so to speak. And then they start firing everybody every fall, to make their
Yeah.
their annual numbers, and that broke that, no more pensions, and the pressures now on the individual worker. And I think people are waking up and being like, what is natural, and that performativeness coming down through the public health system, the public school system. I had a teammate who has a 5-year-old daughter or 4-year-old and went to preschool, and they were having SMART goals for their reading. SMART goals for a 5-year-old.
So, okay. And were they really trying? And they were SMART goals. All those 5 or 6 categories, they were trying to hit them with your goal for reading.
Yeah. And that creates a hierarchy of smart kids and stupid kids, people who can read, people who can't read. Like, it just divides the world asunder, and it selects for the top 5% who can naturally do something. And then everybody else gets a habenula hit, and they feel like a failure, and they get depressed, and they get anxious, and they get addicted to technology or whatever else. Like, this is what we're doing to ourselves. And so how do we dig our way out? The only way to do that is to reunite us with our natural faculties, which is iteration and practicing and neutralizing our habenula, and not, having something to do with like failure management. Like, that's the modern skill right now, Brennan, is how do we turn off our habenula? How do we know we have that experience? When we get a no-do gap, how do we get curious about that and say, hey, is that true? Am I really a failure? No, you're never a failure. So we have to really rescript that, because it's really harming people. It's really harming people.
So I go to the app, and then I know, because I get the videos. I love the videos. I also love that you told me you did not use an AI. I can't stand, I already hate AI slop. So AI voices. So I'm like, you're like, no, we had someone read this. I appreciate that. A real person reading the narration.
Yeah.
What a concept. So they come here and they have scorched earth in their brain.
Yeah.
And they are focused. They can't help but focus on their failures. They've tried this a dozen times already, and they're like, well, now I'm going to change, right? And they come here. What should they do? What should they do with the app?
So what they should do is they should practice a habit every day, a practice every day. And they should practice something they think they can get themselves to do. And then when they can't get themselves to do it, then they ask for help from coaching, from their group, from, iterations that the app offers. They go to, how-tos if they're out of ideas. They go to the training area if they need more mindset training. They go to the tribe area, the fresh tribe, to be with people who are also, overcoming these things. And the social support there is anonymous and confidential. And, so they can post, and they can send hearts, and everything's anonymous. So there's not performativeness. There's not like, oh, this post got like 157 hearts and this one got 3, that's another failure event. So deliberately, I left all of that out so that people wouldn't be prone to comparing to others or feeling like that they're failing at it, at just saying what's true for them. And the authenticity that comes through that feed as a result it's just amazing. It's so amazing. People are amazing, and they have such wisdom and such honesty and such truth, because there's no reason to perform for anything. They're not performing. And to get somebody in a state of non-performance on social media, on a form of social media, is absolutely amazing to me.
How is that? I do kind of see that people have been very, so I've looking through the tribe feed, people are, I have seen people who are identifiable in places talk candidly and vulnerably about things. But here it's just like people are blowing. It's kind of the way when the internet first started and people first started putting tweets in, they're just like, I ate this for lunch, or this was dumb. Did you see this? And now it's like you have to craft your post and because it's a reflection of you and it's your personal brand. So it was hearkening back to a thing where people were just like, I'm publicly diarying, but nobody knows who I am. Da, 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 da.
Yeah. And that to me is important because at the end of the day, what matters is that you have been honest with you and that we are just simply here to witness that. And the way that the brain processes that is I said something vulnerable and I'm not being attacked, and I'm getting love and support from my truth in return. And it's up to me to move forward and to be insightful and to find what's true for me. And it's not going to be this performative distraction where you have to perform for others in order to belong.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how wise or witty or truthful or whatever or trauma dumping you are. What matters is that you are authentic with what you're looking at today.
Well, your mission is beautiful. The implementation of it sounds horrifyingly large, but maybe if it's only individuals working together in these groups, if somebody does at the end of the day, they go in, they learn about the iterative mindset, they learn about the habenula, they learn about how their brain can give them trouble on this. If they face their failures, how do they get over that first time where they set up a habit and you work on it and they've done this 10,000 times before, 10,000 different ways? What is the softness inside, or what is the thing they should tell themselves, or what is the thing they should do to try to figure out what's the next iteration of this? So people who are not used to iterating, how do they iterate when they've got all this baggage?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the trick, right? Like, I think, the reason why I created the first level of the mindset videos, the animated series for level 1, is to give that first dose of like, hey, think about it this way, instead of this is the better way to think about it. And so when they're trying something that they've tried a million times before, first of all, don't try what you tried in the past that you're burned out on, do something different. Do something that you might, have a little green field around, not the scorched earth area, find something that's mildly interesting or that you think is doable, right? So start there. And then when you embark on it, don't expect it to go as planned. 95% of the time, it's just information about what to do next. Like, oh, I don't like cooked vegetables. Now I'll do fresh vegetables. But I learned that, and now I'm going to be more successful going down that road than forcing myself to performatively do cooked vegetables, like I thought was the right thing to do. So it's really just, and they're kind of like institutionalized. They're like, really, can I eat what I feel to and what I feel attracted to? And can I start with, what actually works for me and not what works for everybody or what I should do, And so that's the liberation. They almost can't believe that it's that simple, that it's just like find something where you can get yourself to do it as long as you can, and then iterate when you find that you become inconsistent, because it's your brain breaking up with that or asking you to level up or make it more interesting or, do something slightly different, but if you're constantly looking for the iteration, then you cannot and you will not fail, because iterators don't fail because they just iterate. There's never a moment where like I failed that because I didn't make the SMART goal on that time, that deadline that I gave for myself, or in that way. There's no sharp knives to cut yourself with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Some of the ways you've talked about people, kind of a love and hope and optimism for humanity in general. And then the way you've been very kind of critical of, I think, what is sort of maybe the markety, advertisey, business productivity focused world that we're all kind of steeped in, is that's all that stuff feels like you might be not so materialist, but you are a scientist and a doctor full of facts in science and medicine. Is there any spirituality or personal philosophy about the entire universe that gets infused into any of the work you do?
Mm, yes. What do you want me to say about that?
You can say
Yeah.
anything you want about that.
Well,
Anything you,
I would
yeah.
say that, my stance is whatever somebody's definition of spirituality is, my hope is that it makes them more loving, generous, forgiving, kind, and effortful. I think that, one quote that really resonated with me on a documentary that I saw recently from a Buddhist monk was life exacts a price for anything less than full participation. And I believe that. Somehow I believe that we have to be engaged in this process. We can't just check out or hide away or, play small. And that doesn't mean we become like a big influencer or we, get ourselves a narcissist. Like I think that's a misguided interpretation of that. But I think that anything scientific is vacuous, and the great scientists know this without some spiritual recognition, some recognition of we live on a planet that is going however many tens of thousands of miles a minute around a flaming ball of gas, with no planets in sight that are like ours, but a universe that has yet to be quantified. You know, if that doesn't cause you to question whether there's a higher something order to all this, whatever you call it, I don't care. But there is an order to all of this, and I don't know. It's a mystery to me as to what it is. But I do believe that humans. I've spent time with humans from all walks of life, and I really mean that. Oklahoma, prisons, Harvard, business people, farm people, rural, city, whatever. And at their heart of hearts, the vast majority of people are healthy enough to be good, to show you their good side pretty quickly. And then others, I would say, are just really, really damaged. And we haven't figured out, how to support them. And maybe their brain's a little wonky in terms of its wiring. Yeah.
Are you just nature nurture optimistic, and that's how you can maintain such a view in a time where I think people are really acting out and they're fearful and they're angry and they're divided and they're cynical. Cynicism is rampant.
Yeah. Well, what's happening neuroscientifically is that we're living in a world where there is a power grab for your habenula personally. Whether that is to distract you, to addict you, to disempower you, to do nothing, to feel hopeless so that somebody else can get over or manipulate you. And so I think that I'm not purely an optimist. I'm a realist about what's happening in those realms. But I also know that the way out of that is to be empowered through knowing this area of your brain. If I could touch a button that powers you down and you didn't know that button existed, I have complete control over you. But if you know the button exists, that gives you a chance to unplug from that power dynamic, to restore your own, purpose, your own sense of wellness, your own sense of, positive being. And yes, I grieve every day watching things that happen in the world that I think do not match to my values of, love and support and truth and honesty and collaboration and, equanimity, even the natural world, what we're doing there. We need to have what I call a grief anus these days. The grief needs somewhere to go. We can't just cry on the inside and just get more and more swollen with tears, right?
Yeah.
And those are the modern things. Manage your habenula, have a grief anus. The energy needs to go somewhere. I put somebody on the land here the other day in front of these like ginormous wind chimes that we have, and she was just sitting there crying because her boyfriend and her are breaking up, and she's laying on the ground, giving it to the earth. Like these are the things we need to do and we need to take seriously right now.
Okay. Well, your optimism about the fact that some change, because I also think change is one to one to one, and that individuals, I believe, other thing, there's this other Buddhist monk who, again, all the change, people want the world to change, and this Buddhist monk is like, no, 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 no. The only thing that can change is you. So you're saying, again, a steps in understanding yourself, why you do what you do, how you do what you do, why you did what you did, what's going on around you, and then moving forward from there instead of handing off, instead of doing avoiding and cynicism and like, I'm just going to shut it all off. I can't do anything about it. I'm going to shut it all off. We always have power. I feel like we do have some power over ourselves. So I think that's what you're saying. Knowledge about yourself and then using that knowledge to be better.
Well, we don't have power over ourselves unless we know about habenula, because the habenula is the power center of ourselves. It determines everything we do and don't do. So again, if you want to have power over yourself, start there.
Okay. Which book of yours should they read right now if they want to know everything about the habenula?
I would do.
I mean, they could start with the app, because the app, your video series at the beginning, again, does explain it. I mean,
yeah, it's 13 minutes of that video series, and I really encourage people. It's the Mindset Level 1 series, which you will see on your homepage if you get through the app and you go to the lower left, upper left progress area, says My Progress, and you go there, it'll invite you. If you go to train, it'll invite you. So It's easy to find. A lot of people are finding it, and get through that, like that's it. And then I'm working on a level 2 right now. So that'll be more of that. It's bringing more of the concepts of the book in. I would say audiobooks for me are the ticket. But you're also welcome to buy the Unstoppable Brain. But Unstoppable Brain over Well-Designed Life, even though Well-Designed Life still is timeless and still has a lot of amazing things to say and to share. I really feel like the urgency right now in our current world and understanding our current world must come from people understanding the habenula, and that's what Unstoppable Brain helps you to do.